The founding fathers of soul music. The gospel revival and doo-wop merged into the great season of soul music. Soul music was enabled by the commercial boom of race music that had led to the creation of channels and infrastructures run by black entrepreneurs for black artists. This class of black entrepreneurs hired and trained a generation of session musicians, producers and arrangers, not to mention songwriters, who were specifically meant to serve the needs of black music. Soul music was also enabled by an unstoppable trend towards black and white integration, as more and more white folks accepted the idea that black culture was not evil or degrading, simply different, African instead of European. The sociopolitical inroads made by jazz also helped legitimize black pop music with the white masses. Soul music was also, indirectly, helped by rock music, precisely because rock music made white pop music sound so obsolete. Rock music buried white pop music, but did not quite offer an alternative. On the other hand, rock music legitimized black pop music. Rock music was basically a white version of rhythm and blues. And black pop music did offer an alternative to the Italian crooners and the likes. As the civil rights movement staged bigger and bigger demonstrations and increased African American pride, soul music became more than party music for young blacks. It became a rallying flag for the black nationalist movement. While never truly political in nature, soul music's ascent in the pop charts came to represent one of the first, and most visible, successes of the civil rights movement. Soul music was born thanks to the innovations of a generation of post-war musicians who, essentially, turned gospel music into a secular form of art. Soul music retained its vocals-driven image, typical of all pop music, but, like so much pop music, its hits became increasingly dependent on the skills of the arrangers and producers. In other words, soul music mutated transparently from a vocal style into a sound style. This mutation took place mainly in four places: New York, Memphis, Detroit, Philadelphia. And it corresponded with four independent labels, respectively: Atlantic, founded in 1947 by white songwriter Ahmet Ertegun; Stax, founded in 1959 by white country fiddler Jim Stewart; Tamla Motown, founded in 1959 by black entrepreneur Berry Gordy; and, much later, International, founded in 1971 by Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff. The sound of Atlantic was largely the invention of producer and former critic Jerry Wexler, hired in 1953. The peak of Atlantic's reign on soul music came when, 1967, Wexler started working with arranger R.F. Martin and engineer Tom Dowd. Former Philadelphia preacher Solomon Burke transferred the fervor of his sermons into the stirring rhythms of black dance music. Needless to say, his live shows became legendary for their delirious intensity, second only to James Brown. His material ranged from Virgil Stewart's Just Out of Reach, 1961, possibly the first country crossover by a soul artist, to Burt Burns' Cry to Me, 1961, Gene Pitney's If You Need Me, 1963, Alain Toussaint Scott, To Get You Off My Mind, 1964, Burt Burns' Everybody Needs Somebody to Love, 1964, his own The Price, 1964, perhaps his vocal masterpiece, and Don Covey's Tonight's the Night, 1965. Soul music was, fundamentally, a consequence of rock music. The leadership went from the blacks, rhythm and blues, to the whites, rock and roll, back to the blacks, soul. Soul music was everything that rock music was: dance music, personal expression, teenage angst, political rebellion. Rock and roll had stolen the body, the sound, of rhythm and blues, and soul music. Stole the soul, the spirit, of rock and roll. From the musical viewpoint, the aesthetic priorities of soul music were rather different from those of blues music. The singer was still the center of action, but the arrangement, the ambience, the soundscape, was way more important than in rhythm and blues. The great figures of soul music were, first and foremost, arrangers. The mystical element of blues music was largely lost, replaced by sociopolitical awareness and a philosophical inquiry into the meaning of life, or simply by enjoyment of life. In many ways, one could claim that soul music was the result of black musicians adopting the European stance about artistic matters, intellectual, creative, melodic. At the same time, soul music introduced a new form of dancing, elegant, sensual and nonetheless primal. Credits: Piero Scaruffi Research, Vitor Hugo Lizard Leonard.